Ersichton, murderer of trees. Demeter's task was a sacred one, and all who tried to frustrate or destroy her work had to be punished severely. But the harshest punishment of all was dealt to Ersichton, the king of Thessaly, the man who wantonly cut down trees. This too is a myth, of course, but a very useful one. Forests were no less valuable to men in those days than they are today. It was an evil deed to cut down a tree, for people believed in every tree there dwelt a nymph, called a dryad, and that dryad would live only as long as the tree himself. Whoever wished to cut a tree down had to think very seriously before he did so, for Demeter loved and protected the dryads. There was not a man in Greece who did not know this, and Ersichton, being a king, should certainly have known the wishes of the gods even better than an ordinary man. Yet while he should have tried to save the forest, his carving for luxury blinded him to his duty, and he cut down trees pitilessly, merely to build himself a new palace. He went beyond all bounds, however, when his eye fell upon a 100-year-old oak which stood at the entrance of the sacred grove. When the king arrived with his courtiers before the sacred tree, the whole group stood silent and hesitant. Finally, the eldest man came forward and said to the king, "Your Majesty, haven't you done enough to damage the forest, building this new palace of yours? Wasn't your old palace beautiful enough? Listen to words of advice. Beauty is something which everyone admires. Luxury is not. Try to understand that and don't cut down the tree. For your own sake, pity the tree that lives there, for Demeter." But Ersichton cut him short. "Keep your advice to yourself, old man, and don't think your white hair will protect you. What do I care about dryads or about Demeter? I am protected by stronger gods. Even if Demeter herself lived in this oak tree, I will still cut it down." With these words, he seized an axe from a slave and furiously began to chopping the noble oak. Immediately he did so, a miracle occurred. Blood spurted from the wounded trunk. The onlookers were horrified, and a slave tried to hold the king back. Ersichton turned on the man in fury and killed him, shouting, "There, you dog! I will teach you to warn me about Demeter." And with these words he renewed his attack upon the tree until it toppled beneath his blows, and the dryad in it died. Now the dryad had been more dearly loved than any other in the grove, and her sisters ran in tears to Demeter and told her of the terrible thing which had happened. "See what it did, the beast," they cried, "and hear what he said about you, mighty goddess. Even if Demeter herself lived in that oak, I will still cut it down." He snarled, "And you, dog, I'll teach you to warn me about Demeter." And then he killed the poor slave and cut down the tree, and we lost the best friend we had. The goddess was furious when she heard those words, and immediately thought of a punishment to fit for the hideous crime. Now it was the turn of Ersichton to be pitied, if such men can be said to deserve any pity. This is how he was punished. Demeter ordered to a dryad to go to the distant Caucasus and seek out Paina, the goddess of hunger. The dryad was to tell her that by Demeter's command she should go to Ersichton and breathe their affliction into his body. In an instant the Druid had reached the Caucasus and found the goddess of hunger in a cave on a dry, thorny mountainside. Hunger was bony, haggard, and tousle-haired. Her robe was black, and her eyes were sunk deep in their sockets. The Druid recoiled in horror when she saw her, but she soon got her courage back and told her why she had come to the Caucasus. The goddess of hunger obeyed Demeter's command upon the instant, and carried by a whirlwind, she soon reached the palace of Ersichton. Night had long since fallen, and she found him fast asleep. Hunger covered him with her wings, and breathed her poisoned breath upon his face. That was all. Immediately afterwards she disappeared, and the same wild speed with which she had come, and then something strange appeared and happened. Although Ersichton was still fast asleep, his jaws began to open and close, because he could see food in his sleep, and although there was nothing in his mouth, he started chewing and swallowing. Suddenly the king woke up. Hunger knew his trades. He roused his servants immediately and bellowed them to succour the land, drag the seas and empty the skies, and to place whenever they could find to eat before him. He gulped food down with pausing for breath, yet the more he ate, the more he complained his hunger. His slaves brought him dish after dish, spilling over with food, and all the while he shouted it was too little, and sent them back for more. Food that would have sufficed to feed whole nations was not enough to fill his stomach. The harder he chewed and swallowed, the sharper his hunger grew. His stomach was like a bottomless pit. The more he tried to fill it, the emptier it seemed. Insatiable pangs of hunger tore his entrails and tortured him all the more, and so his whole fortune disappeared into his stomach without being able to quench the fires that burned there. Finally, when he had gobbled up all his wealth, he lost his kingdom and his followers, and sold his last slave, he found himself left with nothing but his daughter, Mistra, who pitied him, though she surely deserved a better father. This Mistra was so beautiful that the sea god himself, Poseidon, had once fallen in love with her. Now her father, unable to resist his appetite, sold her too. While on her way to slavery, however, Mistra begged Poseidon for his help, and the sea god, who still loved her, bestowed on her the power to change herself in any form she wished. So Mistra became a bird and immediately flew back to her father. And he sold her again. She became a horse and returned once more, and again he sold her. And so she became a heifer, and then he sold her again. Sorry. Ah! Okay. Having finally changed herself into a roe deer, she found herself faced by a flood-swollen river which she could not cross. Then Ersichton could no longer control himself. He fell ravenously upon his own flesh and died in horrible agony. Thus the died man who killed trees, and thus Demeter protected her to God works from a few evil men, by showing that hunger awaits those who destroy her woodlands. Most people, however, love the trees and the green plains. They love their work on the land and honor the goddess Demeter at great festivals. One of these was the Eleusinian Mysteries, which was among the greatest feasts of the year. This festival, which took place every spring, was a gay celebration which men honored Demeter and welcomed the return of their daughter Persephone before throwing themselves into the year's work in the fields, as the goddess of agriculture had taught them.